In this video, I'm going to show you how to get better at Warzone 2. It doesn't matter whether or not you're a beginner or you've been playing this game for a long time, this video will still help you out. In order to make this as clear as possible, I'm going to split this video into 3 sections. Section 1, I'm going to start with the fundamentals. The second section is going to be the advanced tips. The third section is going to be general tips. But who am I and why am I giving you these tips and why should you listen to me? Now, I've been playing COD for about 15 years. I've played every single COD since COD 4, and in terms of Warzone, I started playing competitive way back in Verdansk, and I've been playing competitive on and off pretty much ever since. Of course, I'm not the best player in the world, but I'm still pretty good and I'm good enough to give some advice. Like I said, whether you're just starting out or you're trying to take the game to the next level, I feel like my tips can help you anyway. Let us start at the beginning. The main objective of Warzone is to land in, loot up, and be the last one surviving. But before you even jump in, there's one very important thing you need to get right, and that's your settings. I've already made a full settings video before, so I'm not going to cover these in too much detail, but I'm just going to cover some of the basics. Now, if you're new to the game, you probably won't really even know what controller settings are going to be right for you, and that's okay. I'm going to leave mine on the screen anyway. Feel free to check out one of my previous videos on settings if you want to get them right. You pretty much just want to make sure everything's set up right, everything's running properly, and everything's ready to go. You don't want to be distracted by any of that by the time you jump in. The next tip is some beginner strategies for the game. Al Mazrah is a pretty big map, and as to where's best to drop, it just really depends on you. If you want a lot of action, you'd probably drop in places like Observatory. If you don't, you'll probably drop somewhere around the edge of the map and just kind of play it a bit slow, get looted up, and get everything you need. I personally like to land at this gas station, Hydroelectric. If you don't know, gas stations have cash registers inside, which usually contain anywhere between 200 cash to sometimes even a couple thousand. They also spawn a lot more cash just on the shelves, so sometimes I can walk out of this building with 5k. That's enough to buy 2 guns straight away from the buy station. Things like safecracker contracts can be really useful as well. You get a lot of cash out of those. There's also a lot of hidden caches where if you open them, you get a lot of cash, kill streaks, weapons, etc. These are hidden all over the map, and I'm going to put a map on the screen right now if you would like to drop on one of them, and then that's a great place to drop. You want to prioritize getting cash together, getting early guns just in case there's anyone nearby, and then you want to focus on buying your weapons from a buy station. Before you load into a game, you can create a class. You can use whichever weapon you want, you can customize it to how you like it, and then you can buy those weapons in-game at a buy station. Those loadout guns make such a difference and they'll help you win so many more gunfights. As for which loadouts to pick, this does change all the time, but there's plenty of people out there who make loadout videos such as myself. I try to post every single day on TikTok or whenever there's some kind of meta change or anything like that, and I always post the best guns. If you don't know which guns to use, go over to my TikTok, just look at any one of my recent videos and there'll be some guns there that you can use. I only post the best guns, so you don't have to worry about that. And that's pretty much the basics. As long as you've got your game set up properly, you've got your loadouts ready to go, and you've got a drop spot, that's pretty much everything you need to get started. So we're going to move on to the advanced tips now. The first advanced tip I'm going to give you is understanding the map. But one thing's for sure, I know it is very difficult when you first start out and you don't know the map. I was quite late to the party of Verdansk, so it feels like everyone already knew the map when I didn't, and it's really difficult. This tip could start at very beginner level by just knowing which places are whereabouts on the map, or it could go right to knowing every single window, every single little cupboard, every single angle. This one can go on as far as you want it to go on. And the more you understand the map, the more you start to learn all these spots and stuff like that, the more success you're going to have. The main way to do this is just by keep playing regularly, maybe watching other people play. The second tip in advanced tips is shooting straight. Now, this one's going to sound very basic, but a lot of people who aren't good at the game, they just can't hit shots. At the end of the day, this is a first-person shooter, so if you can't hit your shots, you're going to struggle a lot. You could do everything else right in this video, but if you can't hit your shots, it isn't really going to take you anywhere. So how do you get better aim? Well, for me, the number one tip I have is warm up in a game against bots. This isn't quite as good on Warzone 2 because it only lets you put 5 bots into a game, but it's still enough to get your aim sorted. What I do is a controller player, I load into a bot game on shipment, I just keep the radar on, put them on the lowest difficulty, and I just walk around and shoot them for a bit. It sounds basic, but it really warms the aim up and gets you ready for the game. Sometimes I would even turn off aim assist, run around and get about 50, 100 or so kills, and then jump into a game and turn aim assist back on. Once I do that, I feel like I can hit anything. Just practice your aim each day. Just jump in on a bot game 10 minutes before you jump on, and literally even within that first session, you'll be hitting better than you ever were before. Honestly, boys, it really does make a difference. So once you know how to shoot straight, it's time to show you some gunfight tips. Some tips I've taught myself over the years is once you finish the gunfight, you need to always make sure you reload. Never ever forget to reload your gun. There's nothing worse than you line up a kill and you haven't reloaded your gun from the last time. You go to shoot, you shoot one bullet, then all of a sudden you have to reload it and you're stuck like a deer in the headlights. Always try to slide in a reload where possible, especially with those SMGs. Another tip for winning gunfights is timing your shots properly. Just because you see someone does not mean you should shoot them. Pick the time, wait till they're in the orbit and watch them for a bit. As long as they don't see you, it's all good. And if you ever do find yourself in this position and you do shoot at someone, you realize maybe you've misjudged the situation. We all do it. The guy turns around and he sees that you're there, or you could be faced in a position where you need to rotate. I have a general rule where I try to never peek the same angle twice. What I mean is, if I'm shooting someone from one angle and then I back off off, reload, play it up, I don't get the kill, I will not go back to that same angle. They're pretty much going to be pre-aiming that angle again. This game's very pre-aimy, and if someone already has that pre-aim on you, when you peek up, you're going to die before you can even react. This obviously does not apply to all situations. Sometimes you can peek the same angle more than once, especially if you have the upper advantage in that angle, but a lot of the times it could be best to just rotate somewhere else, maybe even close the gap, you know? You never really want to peek when someone's pre-aiming you. This also ties in with my next tip of movement. This is one that mostly just comes with, you know, playing over time and having experience. Things like sliding instead of dolphin diving are going to get you killed. Things like missing jumps, missing climbs onto roofs. These are all the things that are really going to get you killed in the game. You need to make sure that you're mastering these. There's also a lot of situations where, you know, you want to be behind cover, but you may not realize that there's, you know, the back of your leg or something sticking out. Movement's not just about, you know, these kids on TikTok running around slide canceling and stuff like that. You know, movement's a lot deeper than that. You know, I have a few friends in the game where, you know, they may die and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, there's nothing I could have done in this situation. But then if you rewind about 5 seconds, they've missed the jump onto a roof, they've missed the angle they've tried to get, maybe they've changed weapons at the wrong time, they got caught with the wrong gun out. All of these things can be the difference between you living and dying. This is going to get you killed. My best tips for, you know, improving this part of your game is to watch what pros do. This is another one of them tips that could go a very long way. Having good movement for a beginner can just mean, you know, even just being able to climb up things. But this is one of those things you're going to improve constantly over time, and it's something you should be aware of while you're playing. Another tip is picking the right fights. These are all things you're going to learn over time, but it's something you should be aware of while you're playing. It's something I've touched upon just there, but if someone's pre-aiming, you know, a window that you're about to peek, you probably shouldn't peek it. You're going to die before you can even react. Evaluate the situation. Does this person know you're there? Will I have to rotate in a moment? You know, is the zone about to come in? Should I really shoot someone on the edge of the zone and start a full fight when I'm about to rotate? And there's a perfect example of this in the clip on the screen. I picked a fight right on the edge of the zone. Luckily, I'm able to self-res in this situation and get away and keep going, etc. But, you know, I go down on the edge of the zone with no gas mask. You know, that very easily could have went wrong. Fortunately, luck was on my side and I got away with it, but it's definitely one to note for the future. Maybe I should just go early and get ahead of them. The timing of your fight is really important as well. Just because you can kill someone doesn't necessarily mean you should. You should always try to play fights that you have the upper hand in. Never pick a fight if you're not fully plated or fully reloaded, etc. Unless, you know, it's just a guaranteed kill. If you're just picking off one person, then you're going to hide. That's fine as long as you get away with it. But generally speaking, you never ever should pick a fight if you're not fully plated. Always make sure you're going into the fight with as many advantages as you possibly can. Another tip I have is vehicles. Now, vehicles are so nice for rotating. You know, if I'm playing a solos game, I am pretty much in a vehicle 24/7. You get a higher field of view, and once you learn how to steer them properly, you can use them to get one up on your opponent very effectively. This is something I'd start learning, you know, once you're starting to get fairly good at the game. Once you can drop 15 to 20 kills in a game, I think this is the time where you should start using vehicles. If you're not already, of course. They can also be really good if you're in a team as well. You know, you're trying to rotate from A to B. You have a lot more cover while you're in a vehicle. Yes, people can shoot you out of them, but it's a lot harder to shoot someone out of a vehicle than it is to shoot them running across the open. Warzone 2 have recently added backpacks where you can carry more things than we used to be able to. You can now carry spare streaks, spare self-resers, a lot more plates. The possibilities are endless. Now, it's really important you're always carrying the right stuff. For me, if I have no backpack, it tends to look just like this. Pretty much every single slot I have is going to be full with plates. If I find a spare self-res, I'll carry one spare self-res. If I find a plate box, I'll replace one of the plate stacks with a plate box. It's pretty simple. There's nothing worse in this game than running out of plates because, you know, you can tell this when you come back from the gulag and you've only got 2 plates and everyone else has 3. It's so hard to win a gunfight. You know, there's so many backpacks that I open which is just full of junk. You know, they're keeping shotgun shells, sniper ammo when they don't even carry, you know, any of those type of weapons. And funnily enough, if you look back to the previous example of this backpack, if I unblur the image, you can see what this guy's carrying. You know, he's got a lot of plates, which is good, but he's also got all these pointless ammo types that he just doesn't need. Of course, this example isn't really too bad. You know, he's only really got some extra sniper bullets there, but it can make the difference. Just now and again, you know, when there's nobody around you, maybe once you've just finished a gunfight, just press down on your D-pad, look through your backpack and drop out anything you don't need, then replace it with everything you do need. Then you're good to go and you're good to move on to your next rotation, which brings me on to my next tip about rotations. Now, I'll put this at the end of the advanced tip sections because rotations are very difficult. You know, if you rotate at the wrong time or to the wrong place, it can cause you to die a lot, and most importantly, it can cause you to be stuck in a situation where you can't do anything. Pretty much in Warzone, you never ever want to be in those situations. If you are in those situations, situation where you literally can't do anything, if I get caught in the middle of the open, I'm getting shot at from so many different angles, there's airstrikes on me, etc. I've got no cover, nowhere to run. You pretty much have to look at it from the point of view that if you're in that position, you've done something wrong to put yourself in that position, if that makes sense. Which is why rotating smartly, rotating at the right time, you know, try to remember where the zone came in. try to remember where the plane came in. If the plane flies right up the left side of the map, pretty much everyone's going to be over that side. This is something you're going to learn over time. You know, when you get to that zone 5, 6, 7, when it starts getting really small and there's not very many people can see a lot of angles in that zone. You have to make sure you time your rotations properly. For example, you should pick your rotations around the gas, really. If there's gases about to come in, it might not be a good time to pick this fight. But generally speaking, I find it's best to just get ahead of them in the zone. It's so easy to gatekeep people in this game. Just wait on the edge of the zone, maybe get yourself on a nice rooftop and just sit behind and you get so many free kills. Whereas if you try to pick them fights from way back to where they were, you'd be stuck fighting each other from left to right in the gas mask constantly coming on and off, and it's just going to be a shit show. Picking smart fights, like I've said before, is it just better to just get ahead of them and just get free kills on them? Chances are it probably is. That's pretty much it for the advanced tips for now. Obviously, there's so many things I could talk about. I could write a whole book on this stuff, but I don't want to keep you here for so long, so I'm going to move into the general tips now. The very first tip I want to talk about in general tips is mentality, right? If you are one of those people where every time you die, you're complaining, you're making excuses, you're saying this, and that, the game did this, the game did that, etc. I don't know how to phrase this, but you're never going to get better at the game, and you're also probably wrong. Now, Warzone 2 is a very glitchy game, and sometimes you really can just not do anything. Sometimes the game just outplays you with the way it works, but you only get a right to say that as if you've done everything right yourself. A lot of people think, oh, I couldn't have done anything in that situation, I don't know how I could have got that kill, their gun's just so overpowered, for example. 9 times out of 10 this is just not the case. You know, if you really want to fix your mentality, then you've got to come at it from the point of view as what could I have done differently. If you end up in a situation where there's nothing at all you can do, imagine a situation where a pro player was in that same situation. Would they have made the same player you did? Would they have missed a few shots? You have to just kind of think what they would have done in that situation, and chances are they probably would have came out alive. It may seem impossible, but if you come at it from a different angle and you come at it with a different mentality, all of a sudden the impossible is very possible. And this is going to bring me on to my next tip, which is communication. This is obviously a huge one if you're playing in a team, and a little bit less important if you're playing solos. Things like live pings are so overpowered. Being able to track enemies through walls for a brief few seconds is not to be underestimated. It also helps your team get a 100% accurate position call on where they are. This can help them make the right decision on which gun they should have out. Is this an AR call or is this SMG call? And it's always going to beat a regular call out no matter what. If you can get that live ping, do it. It definitely can't hurt. Another piece of advice I have for you and your teammates in terms of communication is making sure that you give names to buildings. For example, the building I'm running around in now in Zyra Observatory is a building we call glass. If someone's on top, we call it top glass. If they're down low, bottom glass. This is a common call out in the competitive scene. So if someone's on the roof, you call it as top glass, and it's pretty simple. They know exactly where they are. And also another huge part of squad communication is playing together. If your teammate's calling someone out, it means they probably do need help, or you should go help them anyway. 4 people fighting 4 different teams is just never going to end well. Try and prioritize the same targets, and you'll find you'll run through teams a lot quicker. And my final tip for getting better at Warzone is practice, and most importantly, good quality practice. Of course, jumping on the game every single day, playing a couple hours, etc. is never ever going to hurt. It is ultimately the best way to practice, but another thing I really recommend is watching pro players. This made a huge difference for me because, like I said, I was a little bit late to the party for Verdansk. I didn't really get this game till about 3 to 4 months after everybody else. In order to play catch up, I had to watch some pros, and ones I really liked in particular was Aiden and Huskers. At the time, these were the best 2 on the map. You couldn't really get any better than these. Huskers being keyboard and mouse, Aiden being a controller player, you could learn a lot from them. With me being a controller player, I didn't really used to watch Huskers all that much, but there was one thing Huskers was very good for, and that was vehicles. Even still to this day, Huskers, the way he uses a vehicle is like no other. I learned an awful lot from watching him, and if you have something in mind that you want to learn, watch what they do, and that's like, you know, wait for that situation to come up and watch how they handle it. Don't just necessarily watch the highlights on YouTube, because you're not necessarily going to get the full experience doing that. You can also learn an awful lot by watching the games that they die a lot in. It may not sound obvious, but honestly, if you want to learn anything, just watch the pros and try and watch what they do. It made a huge difference for me, and it's made a huge difference for everyone else who's done it as well. If you can find the time, I highly recommend it. So there we have it. That's my tips on how to get better at Warzone 2. There's obviously quite a lot of stuff I've left out in this video because there's just so many things you can talk about. If you would like to see a part 2, or if you just want to know anything specific, drop me a comment down below and I'll reply to them all. Also, please do be sure to drop me a sub as well. I put a lot of effort into the content, the research, and the editing for this video, so a sub will really help. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.